Hello and welcome back once again to movie reviews. So, finally into some new movies, or at least ones that have only been out for a little while now. So the first one up on my list of things I still need to see before the end of the year was Victor Frankenstein. Now, just like Pan, we have kind of had numerous amounts of tellings of the Frankenstein story. However, I was interested in seeing this one just because I like Frankenstein. I mean, I like Pan too, but Pan's kind of been overdone. Where Frankenstein, they always find a different twist on this one. It's never really just the same story. It's just like they add a bunch of stuff to lead up to how everything's going to play together. So this movie, getting into it, isn't so much about Victor Frankenstein or the monster. I mean, it is, but they're not the main focus. The main focus of this is the story of Igor. Now, for anyone who's ever actually read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Igor doesn't actually exist. He was a character made up for the movie so that the doctor could have a lab assistant, because obviously someone couldn't do all this on his own. So this is kind of sticking with that character, but telling his backstory. For those of you who know the story, Igor had always been depicted as a hunchback. So that's how this starts, is he's a hunchback clown in the circus. He kind of has a crush on one of the trapeze artists, and at one point her rope snaps and she falls. And he rushes out to help her because he also sort of acts as the circus's doctor and like patches everybody up. But at the same time, they like give him crap for reading medical journals and stuff and like studying. So he's kind of abused in the circus, but he doesn't really know any better. So he rushes to her side, and Victor Frankenstein happens to be in the audience, and he's somewhat of a doctor. That kind of comes into question later. So he rushes out too, and he's like, the girl's kind of had it, and Igor's like, no, if we do this and we act quickly, we can save her. And Victor kind of recognizes that this hunchback is a medical genius, and he doesn't belong being in the circus and being abused the way he is. And so Victor kind of is like, come stay with me and whatnot. And at first he's like, no, I can't leave the circus. So then the ringmaster, I guess, who owns the circus, he thinks Igor's going to try and leave, and so he cages him up. And Victor comes back to the circus that night and frees him, and they kind of take off together. Of course, as they're trying to leave the circus, the cruel circus people are trying to attack them. One guy gets killed, the police get called, and now Igor and Victor are wanted for murder. So we get back to Victor's place, and we find out that Igor's not actually a hunchback. He just has a medical issue that's gone untreated for his entire life, because I guess he's supposed to be about 18 in this movie. And so they're able to correct his deformities to where he looks like a normal person. And he still has like trouble walking occasionally, but that's because his body's readjusting to the way it's been programmed to move for 18 years, and now it's trying to do this new movement, so it always wants to like snap back to the old movement. So he occasionally walks with a limp, or his shoulder will go sideways or something, but that's about the extent of it. And so then Victor's like, I want you to help me with an experiment. I'm going to bring you things, and I want you to figure out how to make them function. So he starts bringing him all these body parts, and he kind of explains to him that he feels that he can reanimate dead tissue. And from a medical standpoint, Igor's intrigued by it, but not so much as like defeating death as like repairing something that's been damaged. So Igor's gonna help him like try and repair stuff, and like Igor's research is more or less like developing like a pacemaker type of a crude pacemaker device from the 1800s that would like regulate a heartbeat if your heart stopped functioning. And obviously Victor has bigger plans for these. So Igor keeps developing these devices, like something to keep the heart beating, something to make the lungs function, all the different body parts. He manages to make them function after they're dead. Eventually, Victor's like, I think it's time that I let you in on what I'm actually doing downstairs. So he shows him this little homunculus like thing that he's built, which is mostly chimpanzee but with other parts. And he gives it a charge, and it's able to come back to life, and it starts breathing and whatnot on its own. But he said the charge only lasts like an hour. So then they take it to the medical school because they're going to show it off to everyone. Because that's how they used to do it back then. You get into a room and you're like, here's what I did, and you show it, and either they approve it or they disapprove it. So most of the people walk out on the experiment except for one rich kid who at first is the heckler of the crowd. He's giving Victor a bunch of crap, and then once he sees that it actually works, he's like, everyone kind of shunned you, but I'm going to back you on this one. So they now have their funding. So then the idea is that they're going to build an army of these chimpanzees, and then it kind of gets brought up that rather than working on the chimpanzee, why not see about reanimating a human? Which was Victor's idea to begin with, start small, and then if it works, work your way up to humans. Victor does have a backstory as to why he wants to reanimate humans, and why he's working towards this, but I won't get into that too much at this point. So they start working on building the man, and eventually the police catch up to them, and the one cop is trying to go after him, and he can't get a warrant to search the property, so he ends up just breaking in anyway, and Victor and Igor have to flee, and then the cop is kind of thrown off the force because he didn't have a warrant. So even back in the 1800s, you had to have a warrant for proper search and seizure. You couldn't just like burst into somebody's house and be like, hey, look at all this shit you're doing. Apparently, I don't know, I didn't live back then. So he's kicked off the force, but he still doesn't give up. He manages to track down where Victor's at, which is they've moved their location to this castle owned by the rich kid. They get there with the man that they've been building. Victor actually has a lot more lab assistants because this rich kid employs his entire workforce to know what's going on here. So they build their man, and then it kind of plays out like normal. You find out Victor's backstory about why he's building this man, and throughout the movie you can tell he's kind of going mad the closer he gets to doing it. He wants to see it to completion to the point that it's driving him insane. And then once he actually sees the monster he's created, he realizes, this isn't life. So then him and Igor have to kill the monster, of course. And then that's pretty much the end of the movie. Mostly this barely touches on the normal story of Victor Frankenstein, except for the last 10 minutes of the movie. Mostly it's Igor's story, where did Igor come from, why is he there, what happens to him later. Because at one point at the end of the movie they get separated, and then he gets a letter from Victor, and Victor's like, Igor, my good friend, you helped me through this journey, and I thank you for that. I realized that I was wrong. He goes, but I've also made notes on where we went wrong, so perhaps in the future I'll call on you again, which could lead into a sequel to this, going towards Bride of Frankenstein or Son of Frankenstein, one of those, I don't know. Yeah, so I actually kind of liked that it wasn't just Victor Frankenstein building his monster the whole time, and that it did focus more on a side character and just kind of had Victor in the background. Because when the movie starts, it has Igor narrating. He's like, you've heard this story before. Madman creates monster, blah, blah, blah. Goes over the summary of what Frankenstein is. And then it goes into the backstory, and then it comes back to that narration when they're actually creating the monster, when he's up in the air getting struck by lightning. Then he's like, yeah, you've heard this story before. So I kind of liked it for that purpose. I do like that they went down the road of Igor's medical ideas being stuff that we sort of use today, because there was a lot that came out of the story of Frankenstein that was ended up adapting to modern society, like the whole electricity bringing dead back to life. It's like if your heart stops, they can jumpstart it with an electrical shock. Reanimating things that, it's basically the story of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein did somewhat lead to some of the more modern medical practices that we have. Somebody looked at it and was like, hey, why not? And they found a way to do it, and that's why we have some of our medical technology. Reanimating a completely dead body or building a dead body out of parts. Well, we do have organ transplants. We have been doing limb transplants lately, I've heard. So yeah, I mean, a lot of it came out of that. It's like this weird story, and some weirdo in his shop was like, why can't we do that? And tried it and found a way to make it work without it being monstrous looking. So yeah, enough random rambling now. So what am I going to rate this movie? I said the movie's not without its flaws, but overall I did like the way they arced the story, where, like I said, they kind of told more of Igor's backstory and revealed that he wasn't a hunchback. He was just someone who was not cared for because he was kind of an orphan. And they didn't really focus the whole movie on building the monster. I mean, they did, but it was more like the psychological damage that was happening to Victor as they got closer to it. Yeah, so as far as a star rating on this one, I would give it I'm going to go with 3.5 on this one. If you like the story of Victor Frankenstein, or just Frankenstein in general, check this one out. You'll probably like it better than some of the more recent Frankenstein things that have come out. It's definitely better than I, Frankenstein. It's better than... what was the other Frankenstein movie they had before that? It's definitely better than the one in Van Helsing, I'll tell you that much. Yeah, I'll give it like a 3.5. It's worth checking out if you like Frankenstein. If you don't like Frankenstein, then maybe sit this one out. And when I say if you like Frankenstein, I mean like the actual Mary Shelley Frankenstein. Like if you like the one they had decades ago with was it Robert De Niro playing the Frankenstein monster? That one was, I kind of like that one, even though people give it crap. But this one kind of goes that route as well, where it's based more loosely on the book, but more that type of thing, instead of like the Hammer horror films where it's just this mad scientist building this monster and it's alive, that one. Yeah, it's not that. But yeah, I would say if you like Frankenstein, check it out. So that is my review of Victor Frankenstein. I will be back with more reviews because I'm trying to wrap up the end of this month. So we'll see how that goes. So until then, remember to like, comment, rate, and subscribe, and share the video because that helps other people see it and helps the network grow. So yeah, again, thanks for watching. Until next time, we'll see you at the movies.